To the December 15th Planning and Zoning Board meeting. My name is Jacqueline Scott, and I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Jamie, would you do the roll?
Mr. Bronco?
Here.
Mr. Cohen? Ms. Fertig? Mr. Gannon?
Here.
Ms. McCartney? Here. Mr. Rotella?
Here.
Mr. Scheckman? Mr. Weymouth? And Chair Scott?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Do we have a quorum? Excellent. Okay, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic that stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to begin by introducing the board members on the here this evening. Down in the first chair is Mr. Steve Ginestra, followed by Mr. Bill Rotella. To my right is Mr. John Barranco, and to my left is Sherry McCartney. Ella, would you please introduce the staff members and the attorneys?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Ella Parker, Urban Design and Planning Manager. With us tonight from staff, we have Assistant City Attorney Dwayne Spence, Assistant City Attorney Shari Wallen. We have Lorraine Tappan assisting a customer over there. We have Laura Tooley from Landscaping, Carlan Grant from our Planning Department, Portia Williams in the back from our Assistant Director at DSD. And then we've got Tyler LaForme, Mark Williams, our tree forester, Glenn Hadwin, and our consultant to the landscaping ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. Coming back to the board, did anyone receive and have the time to review the minutes from the previous meeting, which was November 17th?
Yes.
And if so, are there any additions or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Sherry, you moved? Is there a second to that?
Second.
Steve Ginestra? All in favor of the approval, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Now I'd like to begin by swearing in, or have the city attorney swear in everyone that's here this evening that would like to speak publicly. So would you please stand?
Hello. If you're going to speak to the board today, could you please stand up and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Did I say Steve? Oh, jeez. Thank you, Sherry. I'd like to make a correction that I called Steve Gannon Steve Ginestra. I apologize, Steve. Let the record reflect Mr. Gannon. Okay. I'd like to start with case number UDP S21002 will be our first case this evening. And I'd like to start with Mr. Steve Gannon. Do you have any disclosures?
Phone call with the applicant's attorney.
Okay. Mr. Rotella?
Phone call with the applicant's attorney.
Mr. Bronco?
Yes, I spoke to the applicant's attorney.
And Ms. McCartney?
I spoke with the applicant's attorney as well.
And I also spoke with the applicant's attorney, and I believe there was a site visit from the previous time they were before us. Okay, is there an applicant in the chambers that would like to speak? Robert? Mr. Lockery, you will have 15 minutes. A little louder, I think, please. It might be.
Is it my voice? Oh, that's better.
No,
Just
that's
closer.
better.
All right, now it's on. Okay, good evening. To the chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Board, thank you very much. I'm Robert Lockery, here on behalf of the applicant. The request before you tonight is an application that was last before this board back in September. It's property located at 843 Southwest 14th Court at the northeast corner of Southwest 9th Avenue, and 14th Court is shown in the graphics in front of you. As I said, the project was previously back before you in September. At that time, the project was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Board. Planning and Zoning Board members did come up with specific comments that they wanted addressed and looked at. We thank you for the opportunity to have deferred the item at that point, allow us to go back, take another look at the plans, work with staff, and come before you tonight with some revisions to that project.
Robert, excuse me for 1 minute. Is there something that's going to be on the screen, or are we just dealing with paper?
It's
I
on
have a
our
screen here with nothing on it.
They're working on it.
It's a little hard for me to see around the wall.
There we go. It's there now.
Now you see it? All right. I'll still try to keep to the 15 minutes. I'll go quick, and then if there's any questions. What I'll do tonight is go over a quick overview of the project, again, to remind the board of the project and the public, and then talk about some of the specific comments that came up in September and how they've been addressed in the revised project. The property, as I said, is located at the northeast corner of Southwest 9th and Southwest 14th Court. It is in the Croissant Park neighborhood and is currently zoned RD 15. This is a view of the property. I will say that the property has been upgraded since this picture was taken. This is the only picture available on Google Earth. But the property was purchased by our client about a year ago. The driveway has been improved. The landscaping's done. Of course, the dumpsters aren't there. But the buildings are still intact, and it is a multifamily site with 2 multifamily buildings currently located on the site. One of the features of the current existing site is, of course, all back-out parking onto the street, which you see here off of 14th Court. Okay, here is a view of the building as you're looking from. I should also mention that the Sunshine Church is across the street on the just south of the site. You see that at the bottom of this drawing. North, of course, is up on this drawing. This is a view of the product. We will go through the different elements of it. As I said, it's 8 residential units. The units are each 2 stories of livable indoor space with a rooftop patio area for each one of those units. The overall height of the project is 31 feet 6 inches, well within the 35 feet that is required by your city code. In addition to that, where the property adjoins other properties at the north and on the east, there are additional step backs included as required by your code. One of the features of the building is a certain majority of different types of material, a lot of glass, which is now required as part of the cluster development, but also elements of stone, wood veneer, giving a lot of rich detailing to the building and also movement in the building in and out. Rather than just have a flat wall like you see in many other types of product like this, particularly more duplex and townhouse product, with this product you are seeing a lot of movement in the building, which actually is required by your code and has been incorporated within the plans. Here's a side view of how that looks, and then the next view is again a view of the building, again showing the back and forth of the structures themselves. I want to point out that the structures that are kind of popping out into the yard, those meet the setback requirements. Those are the closest elements, but other portions of the building are pushed back further from the setback requirements. This is a view of the inside of the building. I'm trying to go to the next slide. Okay, so we're skipping around here. This was the site plan that was previously presented to you. You all now have the new site plans on your desk, and I'll kind of walk through the changes. Some of the things that haven't changed, they're unique to cluster homes and why it is called a cluster home. Rather than have the driveways out onto the street, in this case 14th Court and out to 9th Avenue that you would have with a typical duplex or townhouse development, these buildings are clustered around an internal driveway. So all of the vehicular access, the garages, are internal to the site, and you don't see the garages from the street. Instead, what you see from the street are the actual elevations of the buildings. Each one of these units, in addition to having the vehicular access internalized, do have their front doors facing the street along 14th Court and along 9th Avenue. I'll show that in just a minute. But as I went back through the tape and listened to some of the concerns that were raised, there were concerns, and these are a few examples, and I'll go through each one of them, of the width of the driveway, of conflicts between light poles and palm trees, a lack of screening around where the bins would be put out on garbage pickup day, some concern about how the landscaping and the fencing worked, and items of that nature. So the revised plan does a few things. Another significant concern was regarding the guest parking, which was located at the end of, the only guest parking was located at the end of the private driveway. In addition to a concern that was raised by a number of P&Z members, even though the city code requires the amount of parking that was provided, to provide additional parking beyond what the code provides. So this new site plan accomplishes a number of the things that were requested by the P&Z board. Specifically, we did not remove the two parking spaces that are at the east side of the property. There was a suggestion just to flip the building. Didn't make a lot of sense for us to do that and lose those two spaces. Rather, we just added two additional spaces at the front. So although the code requires two guest spaces, this project now includes 4, so we've essentially doubled what the code requires in terms of guest spaces. It's also important that those spaces are out in the front so that someone coming into the site has easy access to them, sees where they're located. In addition, the driveway between the buildings had some pinch points. It was down to about 19 feet. If I'm going too fast, I apologize. I'm trying to get through. But there were some pinch points of about 19 to 20 feet. A concern was raised as you pulled out of the garage, potentially hitting some landscaped areas or something in the back. As a result, we've widened that driveway width, so it's a minimum of 24 feet in all dimensions. There's at least 24 feet all the way the length of that private driveway, so that as a result, there's more movement available for the cars inside that area. As I said, we added 2 additional guest parking spaces out on the east side of the property. And we also took that opportunity to enclose with landscape screening the areas where the garbage will be put out on collection day. There are specific bin locations in each one of the units for the garbage, but on the days they come out, I know the chair and others were concerned about those garbage collectors being out on the swale itself. Those are now enclosed in a landscaped area which is off of 9th. We have kept just the one access on 9th so that you don't have all the driveways back and forth onto 14th and 9th, rather just the one. Another issue that was raised was the landscaped area along 14th. Specifically, the old plans had the hedge on the inside of a fence and then a fence facing the street. And so we reversed that, included the fence on the inside of the landscaped hedge, so that from the street, when you're looking at the site, you see the landscaped hedge and the fence is behind that. We also made improvements to the sidewalk area. I know Mr. Scheckman is not here tonight, but one of the things he raised at the last P&Z meeting was the question of why these sidewalks don't connect with potential expansions of the sidewalk as the community continues to develop, both across 9th and across 14th. So those elements have now been incorporated within the design, where there are the connections to cross 9th and to cross 14th, as well as circulate around the site. There are still the code-required sidewalks that we've incorporated all the way along 9th and all the way along 14th. We have also taken a look at some of the very specific items, such as where the electrical panels were. They were out on 9th Avenue. Those have been moved, so they're internal now, and you won't see them from the street. And what is probably a really nice enhancement along 9th is now the doorway to these 2 units, the main entrance, faces 9th Avenue. So you really encourage that pedestrian interaction, certainly the appearance, which is what you see when you go up 9th or along 14th now. Our front doors, you also see driveways, but you see front doors in each of the existing properties. You will now see that from this product, where the actual front doors of each of the buildings faces the street, even though the parking and the garages are internalized, so you will not see that from the street. We also did another neighborhood outreach, as was requested, and so we sent out notice to both the homeowners president of Croissant Park, as well as River Oaks, as well as all neighbors within 300 feet. Sent it out a couple weeks before we had the Zoom meeting. I know that the mail is very delayed these days, so we made sure to include within that notice that if anyone had any questions, to please give us a call. We'd set up any meetings. We'd be happy to talk to anybody on the phone and go over any issues they might have. I think that I've been rushing through it. I want to get done within the 15 minutes. I think that incorporates the modifications to the building that have been done, the additional public outreaches that has been done. Again, landscaping and drainage is maintained and enhanced through the site. We've added landscaping to include enclosing the garage, the garbage bin areas. We've increased the parking significantly, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Robert. You've got time at the end if you need to
Okay.
come back up here for any reason. Are there any members of the board that have any questions for Mr. Lockery? Mr. Lockery, I've got a question for you. If you covered this, I apologize.
Yep.
In the staff report, we've got conditions. And have you agreed to these conditions in the staff report?
We do. We agree to those conditions, as well as the plans have been submitted, and obviously we'll go back through a final DRC to make sure everything we've talked about is incorporated in those plans, and we agree to those conditions.
Okay. Does the board wish to make the staff report part of the record? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, with no other questions for the applicant, I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to come up and speak? You have 3 minutes. If so, please come up to the podium. When you come up, please state your name, where you live.
Hello, my name is Ted and Sarah. I live 3 houses off of Southwest 9th Avenue. My family has lived there since 1953. This item is very personal for me. I find it quite interesting that it changed from Esmonda clusters to Esmonda gardens. I don't see any gardens in any of those pictures or anything, but it's a nice little play on words. And I was one person that did not receive a phone call from the applicant's attorney. I would just like to know that. But anyway, I was here on September 22nd and spoke, and you guys listened to me very well, and I really appreciate that. Southwest 9th Avenue is a 2-lane road. That's it. If we bring in all this traffic, we'll have to call Elon Musk to build another tunnel underneath 9th Avenue for traffic, because it is just overwhelmed by right now. Me and my dog sat on 9th Avenue around Davie Boulevard for 3 hours on 3 different days. There is so much backup traffic. There is 3 bus stops along 9th Avenue. 6 other school buses use 9th Avenue to get to their routes. There's 18-wheelers getting to and from Southland Shopping Center. Right next door, where it's the Sunshine Cathedral, there is the great Noble McCracker Adult Center, which has those big TOPS buses pulling in and out every day. The one requirement to qualify to go to this adult center is you must have dementia and need assisted in living. So these buses are pulling in and out of there just across the street from where this development wants to be. And I just don't understand why we need this we're a residential area. In our site of Croissant Park, on the city site, it says Croissant Park is an area of safe growth, traffic solutions, and in keeping with the integrity of the neighborhood. Well, this doesn't apply to any of those. This is 0 for 3. And it also says Croissant Park is a short bike ride away from the Performing Arts Center, from 2nd Street, from trendy Las Olas with its restaurants and art galleries. Well, I ride a bike. And I think it was 2 weeks ago when somebody was killed on 7th Avenue on a bicycle. With all this traffic, it is not a safe little drive. And this is what is stated on the City of Fort Lauderdale sites. And then I also believe, I had somebody look at your plans, and I do not think they are in compliance, and they did their due diligence on building codes section 47-19.1 points G, H, and K. And also rooftop parking, you have to have it. Rooftop accessibility, you must have additional parking, more than 4 spaces, with dwellings and businesses. If you have rooftop availability, it does not apply for this right here. The parking spaces are not within code. And, I live in Croissant Park. I love Croissant Park. And we just have so much traffic on 9th Avenue. And we don't need this being built in our residential neighborhood at this time.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the public that would wish to speak?
My name is Nancy Long. I am the president of River Oaks Civic Association. We did not get a notice about the meeting or the Zoom meeting as of yet, and again, it could still be in the mail.
Please speak up into the microphone. Thank you.
This week, I spoke with the vice president from Croissant Park regarding this cluster homes, because not only is River Oaks on Citrus Isles having issues with it, and the president and vice president also spoke up of the overwhelming cluster homes that are coming in their neighborhood. They're not happy with it for many reasons. They're saying that they're filling up these properties with building 0 lot lines. They're building their homes higher than neighbors' existing homes, now casting shadows and changing their land. And the neighbors have to change their landscape because now they're taking away their sunlight where their plants grow. They're saying that on 9th Avenue with the existing traffic, with the cut-through traffic to Davie Road, the hours it takes just for them to get off of Citrus Isles to get on to go to work. Sometimes they sit there an hour to get into traffic because people don't stop and let them in. I know it's common courtesy, but down here, people just don't have it. Everybody's in a hurry to get somewhere, and they don't let everybody leave their home and to get home. It's a real big problem. So 9th Avenue is totally full. Across from me, we have 5 cluster homes that are similar to what they want to build here. And they have the 2-car garages, and they put their dumpsters out in the street. Guess what? Their garages are full of their stuff, not their cars. They're parking their cars in their driveways. They're hitting each other's landscaping. It's a mess. And these cluster homes, we understand the city's growing. We need more people, and they're trying to get as many people into these lots as they can. But it's not working. They back out of their driveway, they back into another car backing out of there. It's a mess. I see it every day. And the trash cans out there on the weekend, and a lot of them, they're using them for vacation homes. They leave their trash out there. They don't bring their dumpsters in. We have to walk the neighborhood and put our neighbors' dumpsters in because it's cluster homes, it's rentals, it's not people that own them. These developers come in, they build them, they sell them, they leave. They're not living here and experiencing what we're experiencing. And everybody's starting to get really upset about it, and I'm hearing about it all the time. So I'm hoping that you reevaluate this. And another thing is that when it rains, and you've got 8 cluster homes with rain leaders coming down, how are you going to contain that water? It can be up to 85 gallons an hour or a minute, every 10 minutes, up to 85 gallons. Does this property have a holding tank for that rainwater? I don't see enough landscaping to hold up the rainwater that the calculations are coming back for these cluster homes on that lot. So we're hoping you reconsider this, take another look at it, and another design where we don't have so much property on that lot. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Okay, is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak? If so, please come up to the podium, microphone.
Hi, my name is George Garcia. I live on 2080 Polk Avenue. And despite the claims on the difficulties that we see in our neighborhood, I believe that for Lauderdale, our area, need to be revitalized and need to be built and get out of the old mold. This building that I see going around, it enhances the property value. Our homes, our land, is going to raise the property value because now it's going to cost more. So it's like me, I want to sell my house. Okay, I move. Now I can have the proper value for the house because the property value raises. The question with the traffic, it's been there forever. Before this, when there was only those houses in that area, they got a problem too. Because this is a city. It's the city of Florida. It's the city of Miami. It's always going to be a problem with the traffic. That's concern the city, not concern the builders. I think it's good for the neighborhood to have new developments in our area, to look our area look decent, not look like we are just backward living on the mountains. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public wish to speak? Please come up to the microphone. I'm going to ask you a question, sir. Were you here early enough to be sworn in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
My name is Samuel Thomas.
You got to speak louder.
My name is Samuel Thomas. I stay off for 917 Southwest 20th Street. And I heard the gentleman there, you feel me, and I heard the lady, you feel me. That was you? I heard the gentleman, I heard the young lady, you know, but I'm a property owner. I ain't owned my house for like about 3 to 4 years right now, you know, and every situation, you feel me, gonna have its own difficulties. We got to work things out, you know. Me personally, I'm trying to sell my house. You know, I understand what they saying, and true enough, y'all have y'all right to feel how y'all want to feel. I understand that, you know, but I just brought it. Y'all been staying for like what?
Excuse me, but there's no interaction between the, that's okay. Thank you. Speak, pull the microphone up if you would. There you
Yes,
go.
ma'am. But me personally, I'm trying to sell my house, and I'm trying to, like, you know, build a value up in. I put a lot of money into it, you feel me? And I just feel like at the end of the day, you know, I think the what they building, it'll bring the value up of the neighborhood. One thing, progress you can't stop. It's gonna go forward. We're gonna always have busy cars. We always gonna have, traffic. We're gonna have all these things. You feel me? But at the end of the day, me personally, and I can't talk for you, ma'am. I understand what y'all saying, but I'm trying to, increase the value of my house. I'm trying to get a nice deal for my house, and I know it might take 2 or 3 years. You feel me? Before we even reach that point, But this is the starting point where we start at now, and that's all I got to say, man.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? It'll save a little bit of time if anyone else plans on speaking on this item to just come over and stand in line, if you would.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have family members, and I live there with my family and in the area of Crescent, and I feel like that the property value would go up. I think better neighbors would come in, more people to interact with. And I don't know. I was looking at them. I was thinking of getting one too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Scott Davis. I live at 1825 Southwest 23rd Street, Fort Lauderdale, 33315. Your sidewalk on the north side of that property, is that ADA compliant? Very good. That was my question.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers that would like to speak on this item? Robert, do you want to come back up and make some comments? You've got 5 minutes.
Sure, and I'd probably be better to answer questions, but a couple points I do want to make. We all use Ninth. We get it, I think, those of us who don't even live in the neighborhood. I think one of the real components of this property and this project that makes it something that why the code does this and why it makes sense is bringing those driveways internal. The property is zoned RD15. These areas are being developed as townhouses, duplexes. What we're able to do on this site, first of all, the density is 15 units per acre that's allowed. This project's at 13 units per acre. So it's almost at the max, but it's not at the max. And what's important to note is that there are about 25 driveways just from this site north on 9th. There are 54 driveways and pull-out cars. These are all cars that have to back out into 9th or along 14th. 54 cars that pull out currently along 14th from this site all the way to the east, the whole block. This gets rid of that aspect to it. There's no longer cars pulling out of driveways, whether they be single-family, townhouses, or duplex. Rather, they're pulling in and pulling out. 8 units does not produce a lot of traffic each day, as we know. It is completely compliant with what has already been, what is already allowed on the site. The building has also been designed to meet the setbacks that are appropriate for the neighborhood and that already are included within the neighborhood. We have a 15-foot front setback along 14th. In addition, we have a 15-foot rear setback so that on the north side of the property, you have the same setbacks that those properties, whether they be single-family, duplex, townhouse, or cluster, have on their north side. We have the additional, because we're on a corner, of requiring a 15-foot setback on our west side, which we do. And we've got a traditional 5-foot setback on the east side, which is our side yard, which is consistent with the building and the properties next to ours, although the building portions above 22 feet do step back even further. I will say that at our meeting, our latest meeting, there was an earlier public participation meeting, but at the most recent one, we did have a resident from River Oaks who attended. It was the woman who lives directly across the street, directly west of this site, across 9th. I don't know if she's here tonight. She was very supportive of the project. I asked her, encouraged her to come, but we did have a positive input from the resident from River Oaks who did attend that meeting, who's most directly affected. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much.
I've got a quick question since he does.
Okay, I was going to close the public hearing and then do that. Okay, is there a motion to close the public hearing? We don't need a motion. Okay. No, you can't.
Mary, I can't hear you.
Wait a minute. Why?
Because I didn't turn my microphone on again. So there are 3 neighborhood associations in this area, and I think it would be helpful to clarify, so before we close the hearing, I know we have one president here. Could we just clarify the three associations? Because I've got some questions on that. Or do you want to do that, Robert?
I certainly can. This neighborhood.
Tell us the boundaries.
Yeah, this property is within the Croissant Park Association, and across the street west of us on the 9th is River Oaks, I believe.
Thank you.
Correct, Nancy?
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for any questions.
Does John want to go
Oh,
first?
yeah. Just a quick question for Robert, since he's up here. Could you, because there was some concern about the drainage as well, and could you just tell us a little bit about the
Yeah,
drainage?
certainly.
that they're making?
So one of the things that happens with the new development site, and the city standards have gotten more, they're more enforceable, and they're creating the requirements that all the water on the site, that drains on the site, has to be held on the site. So that is part of the engineering plans that will go through the process of getting approved by the city. City's asked for those calculations before we even get to this step, and we've done that. One of the items that we've incorporated is a permeable central driveway so that the water can actually collect rather than just running off the asphalt that currently exists for the back out parking along 14th. Rather, the water that comes into the middle of the site can actually permeate through that driveway into the ground.
Right. And I also saw that you had 132 linear feet of exfiltration under there, too.
That's
So-
correct. Yeah, there's an entire French drain system underneath that internal driveway.
And then as far as the trash, I know you touched on that, but they, in the garages, if I remember correctly, they carved out a little, almost like a closet, which is kind of odd.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah, it's in each garage, and then when they come out on the garbage pickup day, those areas are near the parking spaces that are in the front, which will now have a landscape buffer around them while they're being held there.
And I know this has nothing to do with approval, but I have to ask, are these for sale?
They're for sale, yes.
And any idea market rate?
Right now, the market where they are, they'll be beginning to sell at about 1.2 million, up to about 1.7.
Okay, so you're not going to have any, well, enough said. Thank you.
Okay, Mary?
Yeah, Robert, could you clarify on your meeting notification? What was the date of your meeting? When did the notices go out? And where did they go?
Certainly. So I do have the list, and I apologize to Nancy. Nancy's email went to P.O. Box, Nancy Long at P.O. Box 22045, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So we delivered it to the River Oaks Association. They went out about a little over 2 weeks before the meeting, and the meeting was about a week ago. So they went out about 3.5 weeks ago.
And how many people came to the meeting?
We had only about 4 people at the meeting. Only one person spoke.
Okay, and did either neighborhood association take, is Citrus Isles part of River Oaks? Is that, so there's 2 associations. Okay, did either association take a position on this?
No.
Okay, and then I had.
Or at least not one that we're aware of.
Okay,
We asked to go, I mean, in the letter, we said if for some reason that date doesn't work, time doesn't work, let us know. So,
okay. And you sent it to all of the homeowners within those, or you sent it to the association?
I sent it to the association presidents and every homeowner within 300 feet. We basically replicated what had been done last summer. Because the official public participation meeting for this project was done last August.
No, I know that, but there were complaints that that people hadn't gotten the letters, so if you used the same process, I would.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we don't have another, the gentleman indicated I didn't call him. I don't have his phone number, so we have to send by mail.
Okay, and then I just had a question on 9th. I think that came up before.
It's a great question. Yes.
Well, at certain times of days, it's just a constant stream of traffic. I mean, it's constant.
Right.
So now you have 8 homes that are going to be getting out on 9th.
So a couple points about that. Again, the density is where it is. The good news is none of those homes, whether they be on 14th or 9th, are backing out into 9th, which is the existing condition up and down 9th. In other words, if you're coming into your house, you're pulling in. If you're leaving it, you're stopped. You're waiting till you can see the left, no one's coming, and then you pull out either to the right or the left. The other question I thought you were going to ask is there was a question last time in September I saw when I watched the tape about closing 9th. We will not be closing 9th. There's no reason to close 9th Avenue. It's not part of this project, would not be closed. A different question, but similar. There was a lot of discussion about shutting down 9th Avenue, and that's not something we would be doing.
Okay, I understand your point on the back out. driveways, but still having just, I've experienced this myself, so I know.
No, there's
going out on
traffic.
9th in the morning is not easy.
There is
And
definitely traffic on 9th. There's no
other
getting around
way
that.
you could do this, is there? I mean, that's a question.
9th is because it's busier, it's probably the more appropriate road than 14th, and also the way it lays out. So, yeah, it is out on 9th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Does anyone have a motion on this item?
Chair, I make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion by John, seconded by Sherry. Did that motion include staff conditions?
Yes, the motion could, and it's Bill Rotella that made the motion.
I didn't think it sounded like John. His lips weren't moving. I hate all this having to look down. Sorry.
It includes all 3 staff conditions in the staff report?
Yes,
Yes.
that's what he said.
Okay. Motion to approve. May I read the resolution?
Yes, please.
And do you adopt the findings of fact in the staff report? Bill?
Yes.
Thanks. A resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a site plan level 3 development permit for an 8-unit cluster development located at 843 Southwest 14 Court, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, case number UDP S21002.
Thank you. Jamie, will you call the roll?
Mr. Bronco?
Yes.
Ms. Ferdig?
No.
Mr. Gannon?
Yes.
Ms. McCartney? Yes. Mr. Rotella?
Yes.
And Chair Scott?
Yes.
Passed.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to case number UDP T21002, deferred from the November 17th meeting.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I'm sorry. Good evening, Planning and Zoning Board members. I'm Glenn Hadwin, Sustainability Manager for the city. We are returning here today for your consideration of the ULDR 4721 amendments. At the November meeting, the board passed a motion to defer the amendments to this meeting to allow attachments of comments for commission consideration. In response to those comments, we've gone through them and we've suggested a number of small recommended changes. Mike Connor will talk through that to clarify some of the points that came up. After that, we then ask that the board vote on approval of these amendments. So with that, I will turn it over to Mike Connor, the Senior Landscape Architect from CGA. And I have copies of the clarifications I will hand out.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. Again, my name is Mike Connor. I'm Senior Landscape Architect with Calvin Giordano and Associates, and the consultants that have been hired by the city staff to work on this ordinance and bring it to an adoption.
Thank you.
At the last Planning and Zoning Board meeting, there were numerous comments from both some of the board members as well as the public and some of the advisory group members, and you wanted to allow time to compile all those comments. We've done that. We've received those. We have gone through those comments, and we have a suggestion of some corrections and clarifications to the ordinance as it was proposed and brought to you last meeting. And we've reviewed those with staff as well as the city attorney's office. And we wanted to run through those so that you can take those into consideration in your motion tonight. And I believe that Glenn has handed those out for you, so you have a copy of what some of those are. So I'll go through them as quickly as I can. There's about 15 of them. On page 9, definition number 28 for hardscape. We wanted to, hardscape generally is the paved area or the ground treatment area. And we included the words arbor and pergola, which generally are structures that are above ground. And so we wanted to delete those items in the definition for hardscape. The next one on page 9 also is number 32, the definition for interior landscape area. There was some confusion about the word perimeter in reference to that definition, and we want to change that to perimeter landscape area. The third one on page 11 relates to the definition for low-impact site design practices, and
Sorry, can you just point out that's different than on the
This is,
yeah, the previous one for the interior landscape area is different than what you have on your, because we got a last-second clarification from Laura Tooley, the DSD staff member, to make that change so that it didn't change the intent of that definition. So we apologize for that last-second change. The third one was the low-impact site design practices, or LID definition. And there was comments or concerns about the vagueness of the term soft engineering within that definition. And we're suggesting to change that to natural drainage design feature elements. On number 4, on page 14, the definition 65 for planting plan, it just says shall show the location of the plant material. And we want to add, show the size, species, and location of all plant material on the plan. For number 5 on page 26, the definition for, we're outside the definition section now. We're into the landscape and tree packet regulations, or part of the section of the ordinance. And it just said that the soil analysis is part of the landscape plan. We want to clarify that by saying when required by the regulations or the ULDR for clarification. Number 6 is on page 39 or 38, and it relates to the minimum tree spacing requirements. This is a major concern of the group, and we discussed this at length. We came up with some distances between large trees and medium trees and small trees and small palms. And what the concern is, or the clarification would be to add the statement when 2 trees or palms of a different size category are planted near each other, the larger of the minimum spacing distance shall take precedence. So it's not just a large tree to a large tree, small tree to a small tree, but if you have a large tree to a small tree, the larger of the 2 distances should take precedence. On page 43, items Q2 and Q3, this is related to the part of the regulation of the ordinance that's dealing with synthetic turf or artificial turf installed on properties. And we want to add a clarification for an exemption for putting greens. So the terminology that we're suggesting is synthetic turf installed solely for the purpose of a putting green and not located in the front yard area shall be exempt from this requirement. And those 2 requirements being specifically the height of the fiber and the weight of this whole system, because the putting greens generally are shorter than normal synthetic turf. When you see it in somebody's front yard or dog run, what have you, putting greens are generally shorter, and therefore they have less weight to them as well. So we want to add those exemptions in there for putting greens. Number 8, page 45. This was about the maintenance of large trees, and it said an average of 30 feet canopy spread, and we want to change that so that large trees are maintained at a minimum of 30-foot canopy spread. Number 9 on page 50, clarification to meet the intent. This was related to landscape islands in vehicular use areas, and we just used the term peninsular islands which generally at the ends of the rows of the parking, we want to say peninsular and island landscape, so it pertains to all the landscape islands within a vehicular use area. Page number 10 on page 49, clarification to meet the intent to insert at minimum after shall be. So this relates to the size of the islands in the vehicular use areas. And again, we're trying to encourage, where possible, to have larger islands than just the minimum 9 by 18 or 10 by 20 island that you have next to parking space. So the regulations now say that the minimum size landscape island should be the same as the parking space next to it. And we want that to be a minimum, not that it shall be that. Number 11, again, the language in the regulations related to the tree spacing that we already discussed on number 6 also occurs in other sections of the regulations. So we want to make sure that we're consistent and we change it everywhere. That is number 11 and 12 and 13. Items 14, A, B, and C are Scrivener errors, or corrections, I should say. And this relates to the first sentence that has and or, and we want it to just say or. So we want to delete and. And we also have the terminology of prohibited and controlled tree species. We want that to delete the second one, or the first one, so that you only have it in the sentence once. So it was accidentally included in that paragraph twice. So we want to fix that and then correct the misspelling and change the tree genus from is misspelled, and it needs to be corrected to Araucaria for Norfolk Island pine. So those are the from the comments that we received. These are things that we thought we could quickly add to the ordinance and make these changes, get them through the city attorney's office, get their approval, and pass that on to the city commission. And we're hoping that the board will entertain a motion to approve. I will reiterate that when we came on to work and to assist the city with this effort, we were given a task of working with the advisory group that had identified we came up with 30 different issues that they had, and we met with them over a series of couple months, 3 times, meetings with staff, back and forth. We came to a consensus and agreed to the way to resolve all 30 of those issues, and then we incorporated those into the ordinance, and we stand behind what's in this ordinance, and it's ready to be moved forward to the commission, in our opinion.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Mary?
Yeah, could I just ask you a couple questions? I had sent some comments in, and I'm wondering if there's a way, it was an easy way to include any of this. One was just to mandate an urban forestry master plan, not identifying necessarily that it's paid for with trust fund dollars, but mandating that we have one. Is there a way to incorporate that easily? I mean, it seems to me that if we make it something that's being paid for by a trust fund, rather than saying we need to have this, and I guess I don't understand why that's not just an absolute, we need to have it and it should be in here.
I don't think I think that's more up to staff to answer that kind of question. This was just to outline what the fund can be used for. Obviously, planting trees, relocating trees, ancillary costs associated with planting trees, staking materials, those kinds of things. But we want to include the urban forestry master plan in that use of those funds, because it's a very important first step to the city enhancing its urban forest and taking care of its urban forest better.
Well, I guess my question, and I see we have somebody here from staff to answer, is we need to have this. So why isn't it in here that I just don't understand why we can't include a simple statement saying the city shall have an urban forest master plan.
I don't think that's intent or the purpose of the ordinance to mandate that kind of exercise or that kind of report or plan.
And yet we are saying that we're going to take a money from a tree replacement trust fund to pay for one, but we're not going to mandate that we have one when what we're trying to do is protect and grow, enhance our tree canopy. I just, it just seems.
Yeah, let me offer a little clarification. That wasn't necessarily part of the direction we have. That's really a policy decision, and certainly what we're hoping will come out of here is that the board will approve this with their recommendations, and if that could be something included in the recommendation to commission.
Definitely.
Okay, I'll just be suggesting it as an amendment when we get to that point.
Right.
Okay. And then my next question, which came out of the comments from the public last time, is it possible to create an incentive plan for saving specimen trees? And I didn't see any answers overall in this. And as opposed to just having a punitive plan for saving them, is it also possible to have an incentive plan?
Yes, I think that is something that will come out of the Urban Forestry Master Plan effort, is how to implement that kind of incentives we are increasing the value of the trees according to in the code, the replacement value. The credits are remaining the same, but that there's a whole nother level of discussion and meetings and stakeholders that need to be involved in coming up with an incentive plan for developers.
So your answer would be that would be part of the Urban Forestry Master Plan that at least one member of this board will be suggesting we amend to
I think
make a
that
requirement.
would be a hopeful outcome of it, yes.
Okay, I had other questions on here that there's something in here about writing for grants to protect old growth trees. What else are you doing? Are you mandating that in some other way? So is our sole plan, or would that be part of the Urban Forestry Master Plan as well?
Yes, I think that would be part of that, would identify all different avenues of ways to implement the plan once it's adopted.
Okay. All right, John.
John?
Yeah, Mary, I'm glad you brought that up, because and earlier you said, hey, what incentives are there? That was one of my biggest things in the tree preservation was, the whole carrot and stick mentality, and I literally wrote that in my comments. And there is a stick, right? So if you destroy a tree or harm a tree, you're going to pay a fine, or you're going to mitigate it and provide more trees, which makes sense if you get rid of a tree. But if I preserve a tree, which the name of our code is Tree Preservation Code, how do you incentivize a developer beyond just tearing it down and putting up a bunch of other trees or simply paying into a fund? Because, some of these trees, I think, are worth keeping. And it's like everything we do at the city, whenever we pass these codes, whether it be affordable housing, you have to incentivize the people who are the developers, the guys who are doing it. So if you can give them enough incentive, I think it's important that we address that. So as a condition of approval, I would agree with what you're suggesting, is that moving this forward, I think the forest study should be done, the urban forest study, as well as incentives for developers who are trying to preserve those trees.
So that should be part of the overall master plan when you make your.
When I make my move.
Yeah, okay, you got all this written down, Mary?
Start writing that?
Yeah, I would say we should
else.
start writing it. Okay, John, any other comments? I'm sorry, who?
It's me, Madam Chair, Assistant City Attorney Dwayne Spence. If I may be recognized, may I?
I don't hear what you're saying, Dwayne.
I want you to recognize him.
No, I was saying if I may comment on the suggestion for the master plan to be incorporated into the ULDR.
Yes, that's what we're saying, but I don't think you wanted to make a comment? Or you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So the Unified Land Development Regulations are land regulations that are statutorily required in order to specifically provide detailed provisions for implementing the comprehensive plan of the city. It's not a planning document. It's a document that includes regulations that are imposed on individuals that look to develop land. The master plan is more of the, more in line with a comprehensive planning document and would be better suited in the line of like a future land use plan or the comprehensive plan, which is what the ULDR seeks to implement. So I guess to say it kind of shorter or more, try to say it more succinct. The ULDR are regulations that impose on the development of land, whereas the comprehensive plan is the goals set by the community that the ULDR seeks to implement. By putting a provision that requires the implementation of a plan in the ULDR, it's probably not a proper fit for that document. It may be suitable in a comprehensive plan document, or you may even put that type of a mandate in volume 1 of the Code of Ordinances requiring the departments to create such a plan. But in the ULDR, just by the nature of what it is, it might not be a right fit for it.
So let me ask you a question. Based upon what you just said, we redid the comp plan, what, a year or so ago? The whole comprehensive plan. I don't know if that was in there. So I know that there's probably a lot of things in the comp plan that are in conflict with the ULDR and vice versa.
It shouldn't be. The ULDR has to be consistent with the comp plan legally.
So are we saying that, Lorraine, right? Is that in the comp plan? A master plan, tree master plan?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so then how do we can incorporate this into our ordinance? Because obviously we would be following the comp plan. Dwayne? No?
One of the policies is to develop an urban forestry master plan, but that plan can stand alone. The policy doesn't require that it be incorporated into the ULDR.
Okay, so we have it, but it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm not an attorney, but it seems to me if that's the case, I don't understand why we can't put it into this ordinance or to make recommendations to the city commission if it is going to follow our existing comp plan.
No, so the question as far as the regulation, in violating that provision, who are we finding did not follow the provisions of the ULDR and are violating the code?
Can I raise another question?
I don't know the answer to his question.
I don't know why we have we got into this at the last meeting, the Urban Forestry Master Plan to be funded by, it's saying in this document it can be funded by the tree replacement trust, by a trust fund.
Correct.
We're going to replace it, we're going to say it can be done with a trust fund, which it really doesn't have anything to do with, but we can't put in here that there has to be an urban, I just, either then take it out, just don't fund it with a trust fund. But let the city fund it out of their budget. Is it wrong for us to put that in here, Dwayne? Can we not put it in here, is what you're telling us? We can't require an urban forestry master plan?
The question is whether or not it's appropriate in that document. So the mindset is, if, for example, if it's placed in the ULDR and the city fails to create the plan, what is the end result? Does the city violate the ULDR? And
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's good.
I mean, I guess, Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong, we as the board have the ability to make that suggestion, and then the city commission, we can pass it along, and then you at the city commission can make that final decision. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Okay, so when I speak about my amendment, I'll explain yes.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Comments? I don't know that we're going to open the public hearing because we closed it at the last meeting. So what is the wishes of the board? I mean, we already had a
I think if
public
anybody
hearing.
wants to speak.
Pardon me?
I said if anybody wants to speak, why?
Well, that's opening a public hearing. Do you guys want to open a public hearing, or you want to,
Jackie, can I just ask a question?
who's asking?
Bill Rotella.
Yes, sir.
So after the last meeting, it was, we were asking the board for any comments that they had, and a number of you responded. And then we asked the advisory group to do the same, and they responded. What happened with all of those comments? Were they in some way incorporated into this document, or they just are sitting out there?
Let's ask the consultant.
Chair, I just wanted to clarify that what the board had asked at the last meeting as part of the motion was for the incorporation of the other board member comments. We have in addition received community comments, which we included as a separate exhibit. But to clarify the record, the request by the board was for the other member comments, not for the inclusion of the public comments, even though we've included the public comments as an exhibit, and that is in your backup tonight.
Okay, so we just want, Bill, you just want
So,
follow-up.
so even if it's just the board comments, what happened to those comments? Are those comments, were they reviewed and in the suggestions incorporated into this document, or are they just included as an attachment? Because if they were just included as an attachment, that would seem like was a waste of effort. I don't know.
I'll defer to our consultant, but yes, they are included in the backup.
Right, reviewed all the comments. Some of the comments were very related to clarifications and corrections, and some of the comments were changing the intent of what the ordinance, the final resulting ordinance after all of the reviews and discussions with the advisory group came to be. So there is a consensus to an issue. We've incorporated it into the document. So some of the comments were overlapping each other, were contradicting each other, and some of the comments wanted to change the very intent of some of the sections in the ordinance, which you just didn't, that's not what we agreed to do. When we came to a consensus, and we're not going to change something that really changes it.
Sorry, Madam Chair, Assistant City Attorney Dwayne Spence. If I may answer, the comments were received and is for the board to review to determine whether or not there were additional changes that are needed to the document. The document itself, the proposed ordinance, was not amended. At the beginning of the meeting, staff, based on their review of all comments received, came out with these 14 points that they handed out to you that they're recommending based on their review of the board's comments.
That's the one he just read to us, right?
Correct.
Okay,
based
good.
on their review of the board comments and the other comments that they have received and considered. And these are the recommendations of the changes that staff and the consultant has made as a result of their review of those documents.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
Jackie, can I just ask one more question then? Although we, the board, received these comments, on a personal level, I'm relying pretty heavily on the advisory board group, right? That's really reviewing this on behalf of, let's just call it the public, or some part of the public. Did they have the benefit of seeing these comments? And and unless we're going to have public comment, I'm curious to know whether they agree with them.
It's Exhibit 2.
This one here?
It's Exhibit 2, I think. That's Exhibit 1.
And the comments that we received from the advisory group were distributed to all members of the advisory group. There were 7 or 8 or more members of the advisory group. And again, you have a discussion on an ordinance. Everybody that reads an ordinance like this is going to have different feelings and comments and things that they want in it or not in it. And we came to a consensus, a compromise of a majority of the members agreed to move in this direction. And that's where we took the ordinance. Not everybody got everything they wanted. I didn't get everything I wanted. So that was what we were charged to do, and that's what we've done.
Madam Chair, Assistant City Attorney Dwayne Spence, for clarification of the record, I'm hearing a reference to an advisory group. Can someone clarify for the record what and who that is?
think we have an advisory group.
Well, I need, that's been stated several times tonight, so.
That was the group of landscape architects and others that we met with through, in May and June. Fred Stressow and Doug Kuhlman are
But-
here. And
But this is not a group or body appointed by the city commission?
No.
It is not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Yeah, Dwayne, the entire list is on page 9 of Exhibit 2. Alex Fennick, Natalia Barranco, she happens to be my sister. John Harris, Emily O'Mahony, Doug Kuhlman, Fred Stressow. I think that's it.
I just want to state as the chair of this board, the time is here to make a decision and pass this to the city commission. We have beat this to death, and it's never going to be perfect, and not everyone is going to think it's perfect. But we need to make a decision and move on.
I don't have a problem with making a decision to move on, but I did take some time to write some comments to which I really got no response, and I appreciate Bill asking that question. And just to clarify.
Clarify what you mean by that. Comments. What do you mean by that?
I mean, for example, I asked about the urban forestry master plan. I asked about an incentive plan for specimen trees. I don't see anything included, and I didn't see any response to me. Mary, this is a ridiculous suggestion. We're not gonna do it. I didn't see anything.
I think
so. Coming in here tonight, if I can just finish, Jackie. Coming in here tonight, I see the Scrivener's errors and things they fixed. I don't see that incorporation. Now, I'm fine with moving this on, but I'm moving it on with some specific suggestions because, you know, first of all, I am so thankful to that advisory group. I spoke in August of 2019, I believe, with Ann Wiley about the fact that this was being done all by staff with no citizen involvement in it. I know I see Brucey here tonight. I think she was there that day to speak on the same thing. So I appreciate the fact that they volunteered their time. But I also feel that this board has a role in helping to move forward. Otherwise, why are we here moving forward this? And I have at least three things that are important to me. So I'll be making those amendments.
Yeah, I think you should incorporate those into this. See how the board votes on it and move this thing on. Any other comments from the board?
I just want to make one more comment because I agree. Not everything that I commented on was incorporated. And I get it. I'm not the authority here. I wish we had a landscape architect on the board. Do we? I don't think we do. But Doug should probably be on the board. But I'm okay with what's been done. I just want to go on record. One of the things that really bothered me in this code was the encouragement of using synthetic turf. It's called polyethylene. It's a petroleum-based product. I've stepped on it before and almost burned the bottom of my feet off. So the heat island effect is a real thing. I realize you don't have to fertilize it. I realize you don't have to water it. But someday you're going to throw it out and it's going to be in a landfill. And they're microparticles. And they just last forever in a landfill. That's what they do. So it's a good intent. I think it could be better. I just want to be on record saying that I don't like that product. I won't use that product. And it just makes no sense to be so specific in the code because tomorrow there may be some other great product that will disintegrate over time, or I don't know. It just struck me as odd that we're being so specific with specifications in the code. I just want to put that on record. I'm not going to make that part of my motion, but if commission hears this, maybe they'll consider it. That's that.
Thanks, John. Any other comments?
Can I make an amendment?
You can make a motion, anything you want.
Okay, I'm going to start with the amendment, and then I'll move the whole thing, or John can do it, whatever, or somebody else. But I want to move that we amend the ordinance to require an urban forestry master plan for the city of Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, you want to do these each one at a time, Mary?
Well, if I understand what they said, if we do that, then the incentive plan for specimen trees and many of the other things that we've articulated would become part of that plan.
Okay.
So to me, here we are talking about having, doing this so we have this tree canopy. Let's have a plan. I just don't understand why we're not requiring it.
So you're
I need
making a
second.
motion to
to amend this, and they can put it wherever it would belong. Because I
Okay.
don't want to do that, sit here tonight and do that.
May I say something along those lines? Steve Gannon.
Sure, Steve.
It's about the fact, I appreciate Dwayne saying we shouldn't really put something like that in there, but I see incentives in the zoning for like affordable housing and more credits, more things in that. I don't see there's a problem with having incentives in this ordinance. It's not different. I don't think there's a difference in it.
Can we add that to the,
I didn't say
Master plan?
incentives weren't permitted.
Just the plan you were saying, huh?
The plan, I said, may be inappropriate for a regulation, but
but
that
maybe
was
is
all.
the operative word you're using.
Because they're allowing the funding for the plan to be in here, but not the plan itself, and that just seems so, it just seems to me, let's just say it as a city, we're going to have a plan, and then we'll talk about how we're going to fund it.
Okay,
Everything that Dwayne's saying we can't do is what we're doing in here. So when I read the money from the tree canopy trust fund shall be expended, utilized, and dispersed for enhancing tree canopy. What's that have to do with the developer? Nothing. Funding ancillary costs. That's stuff that happens after the fact. Funding the tree canopy study. I mean, why can't that be one of the conditions that's already in here? Everything you're telling me sounds like we're already doing.
So the provisions that you're referencing are outlining the funding that is to be used from the fines that go into the tree trust fund. The city is very, state law regulates how we can collect funds. We cannot do illegal taxes, or taxes that are not authorized by state statute. Therefore, we need to outline how these funds will be expended because they're a regulatory fee, and that's why those provisions are inside the ordinance, specifying when we receive funds based on violations of the code and permitting, where they're being allocated.
okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second to Mary's motion?
I'll second Mary's motion.
Okay,
Can we have a discussion?
absolutely.
Dwayne, could you look at page 116 of the exhibit? And line 10, it talks about the urban forestry master plan. Aren't we already saying what we wanted to say?
Pardon?
It's on page
Page 10.
116 of the exhibit, number 1.
Tell me the page again, John, 10
116
or 116?
of 130, page 10. I'm just looking at exhibit number 1, which is all I have for reference here.
This provision is a funding mandate for the urban forestry master plan. Probably have to speak, ask Member Furtick whether or not this satisfies the intent of her motion. It states that the urban forestry master plan is a strategic and long-term investment in the city's urban tree canopy. Funding from the tree canopy trust fund shall be allocated to publish and regularly update the urban forestry master plan. And then it states at a minimum what the plan should contain.
Right. And I think that's really.
I just think that statement doesn't say we're going to have one. Everything talks around it, how you're going to get funding for it. And maybe that's because, as he said, they don't want to put anything in there saying we have to have it. But I don't know why you talk about funding about something you don't have to have. So I don't want to, I just, if we can support the concept, this gives them time to change 3 or 4 words in this plan and before it gets to the commission and.
Make it more concrete is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I want a plan that we can all see what it says. And then now they've explained to me that that'll be the perfect place to put our incentive plan for specimen trees and to come up with a plan for old growth trees and so forth. Because apparently we don't have that, so.
Okay, any other comments on this motion? If not, Jamie, will you call the roll?
May I just clarify the motion? It's
Yeah.
a motion to recommend that this ordinance be amended to include that, correct?
Well, it was an motion to amend the ordinance to require an urban forestry master plan for the city of Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, I just wanted.
Which I think I think this can be done fairly simply. I know we're having a long conversation about it, but I'm
Right, it's just that because you're a recommending body in this instance, we have to bring your recommendations to the commission, so that's why I was asking, so,
Mary,
you know.
would you consider an amendment? This is John, over here.
sure, John, just go ahead.
What if I amend your motion to say we'll approve the ordinance, move it along to commission, with the recommendation that you suggest? So we're going to approve the ordinance with the recommendations that you're suggesting.
And you know my one concern about this is what happened with the downtown master plan, so I'm happy to do that. I just feel more comfortable saying that we'd like them to amend this to include that. We can do it, I think it's just semantics, so.
Yeah, but I think
I just was trying to get the
what
amendment.
we're looking
I
for
think
is a motion to approve.
What I'm
I'm
trying to
get the
explain.
amendment through and then do the motion, but I can do it the other way.
I understand, but what I'm trying to explain is because this board is recommending, everything that you're saying is a recommendation to the city commission, you know, it's up to the city commission to decide whether or not they're going to adopt that recommended amendment. So that's what I'm trying to clarify.
So either way.
So it's either a recommendation for approval of the ordinance or a recommendation for denial of the ordinance, and then with your comments, or, you know, suggestions.
Okay.
So will you accept my amendment, Mary?
Well, I'm going to just come up with an all-encompassing motion, John, that we pass this on. Sure, we can pass this on with that amendment, but here's our problem. When we did this with the downtown master plan, they went and they said, we didn't have time to research it, and so it didn't get put in the downtown master plan, and we subsequently had a matter come before us that would have maybe been different if we had gotten that one thing in. And we've done that on several occasions, so,
They're the
okay,
commissioners.
I'm not going to filibuster. I'm going to say, I don't care how this is phrased, but I hope the city commission understands that we have a very strong recommendation for a mandate for an urban forestry master plan, because why else are we trying to build or protect and enhance our tree canopy if we can't just sit down and write a plan? So my motion, do you want me to just redo the motion, John?
Yeah.
Huh? So I'm going to move to move forward the ordinance with a plan, with a strong recommendation.
You have to do something with the previous motion?
Well, was it seconded? Because if
Yes,
it wasn't.
was.
It was? Okay, yes, then you'd have to, but I just recommend that with the next motion, that you do a clear recommendation for approval or denial of the ordinance in accordance with the requirements of this board for the commission.
But we have to act on the previous.
Okay, I'm going to withdraw my
correct.
motion and make another motion.
Wait a minute.
Okay,
We have to act on the motion that's on the floor.
and I'm going to withdraw it.
Okay, motion's
Okay.
withdrawn.
Okay, so
Second.
now I'm going to make a new motion.
Okay.
I'm going to move that we recommend the ordinance number whatever to the city commission with a strong recommendation to require an urban forestry plan for the city of Fort Lauderdale. And that if that plan is not required, they remove any provisions for funding from this document.
Is it a recommendation for
Funding
approval of
plan.
the ordinance or denial?
She
I
said
I move
approval.
forward.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the word approve, so thanks.
Can you?
This
that
seems like
motion-
such a simple thing to do. It just, I don't know why it's so hard to say we're going to get a plan. I just don't understand it.
Okay, I want to hear the motion again. Jamie, can you read that? Nobody seconded it.
I only got to recommend the ordinance to the city commission with a strong recommendation to require an urban forestry plan for the city of Fort Lauderdale, and there was something about funding.
Yeah, I don't get the whole funding part.
All
of
right,
it.
I'll just leave.
Recommendations, and, right, you left out approval. I heard it.
Okay.
No, we closed the public hearing at the last meeting.
Well, I thought we were deciding whether to let them talk. Okay,
We're in the middle of a motion, and
okay. Okay. All right, so that's,
no, we're not finished with
so
the
we're
motion.
moving for approval of this with a strong recommendation from an urban forestry plan. Can I add that that plan will incorporate incentives to maintain specimen trees and old growth forestry?
Well, it sounds like you're trying to write the master plan.
I'll
No, I
second
just
that.
wanted to include it.
If I could,
With you, I just don't know if the wording's right.
real quick, Mark Williams, City Urban Forester. As far as incentives go, in my honest opinion, it's a bad idea to guarantee something you can't guarantee by saying that it will include something that I can't guarantee it will.
All right.
All I can include is we'll have the discussion and work through the logistics. That's the better route to go.
Well, that was a suggestion, so
Yeah.
that's no guarantee either. It's just a suggestion.
But it will be part of the process. We'll have the discussion. We'll go through how that theoretically could work and see, is it going to work or not? That's all I can.
Exactly what we suggested.
Imagine when we
perfect.
create this this master plan, we'll have input to that, or that stuff can be added.
That'll be interesting. Okay, maybe we will.
I think we should.
Right.
But I think we should, please read the motion one more time and see, make sure we can vote on this and pass
Correct.
it along.
To recommend the ordinance to the city commission with a strong recommendation to require an urban forestry plan for Fort Lauderdale, and that plan will include incentives to maintain specimen trees and old-growth forestry.
She said recommend the
That's
ordinance for approval. That has to be clear in the record,
I
please.
think Mary's going to reword
Definitely
her.
heard the word approval on the
I
second
just-
one.
Okay, and suggest the urban forestry master plan include incentives for, is that okay, Glenn? Is that include incentives for retaining specimen trees and old growth forests? Is that okay? Just suggest that it include it? We're allowed to do that, right? Yeah.
Are you seconding
I'll
that, Joe?
second that.
Okay. If there's no more discussion,
I'll have a little discussion. Mary, you don't have to ask if it's okay. If you want to suggest they plant cactuses all over the city, you could suggest that.
I mean, I thought the whole reason
You don't
were
have to
doing
ask
this is
anybody.
So we could save our trees and enhance our tree
Yeah,
canopy.
no, I get it. It's perfect. So it's seconded.
okay, John, did you want to make any other comments?
That's it. That's the only
Okay,
comment I had.
okay, Jamie?
Ms. Fertig,
Yes.
Mr. Gannon,
Yes.
Ms. McCartney,
No.
Mr. Rotella,
No.
Mr. Bronco,
Yes.
and Chair Scott.
Yes.
Passed 4-2.
Okay, let's clap. We passed the urban. Okay, thank you all for coming. Let's move on to case number UDP T21011. Yeah, I know.
Ms. Chair, would you like a brief summary of the item?
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
So the ordinance in front of you tonight, the proposed amendments to the ULDRs is primarily to update the school level of service within the regulations, which is currently included in the interlocal agreement with the school board and the comprehensive plan education element. It's 100% gross capacity, including relocatables, or 110% permanent capacity for those schools with less than 10% of their population and relocatables. So the school board, in agreement with the municipalities, included that level of service in the interlocal agreement and got agreement on that level of service based upon increasing flexibility for schools and their capacity, so that way boundaries don't easily get changed. As you all know, the residential development is already required to show that they're meeting requirements for school concurrency, and each residential development is required to provide to the city what's called a school capacity availability determination letter. And so what we've done with the ULDRs is we are amending two sections. One is the adequacy section to mention the requirement for this letter on school availability, and then also the education mitigation section to not only update the level of service, but then also kind of streamline and make a little bit more clear the review process, and update other language in accordance with the interlocal agreement with the school board.
Very good. Thank you very much. Does the board have any questions regarding this?
I do. I just, as I was reading through this, I was wondering if the city had looked at our schools and their capacity right now and seen how this will impact us. We have several schools that are above capacity. We don't generally think this is a city, but actually we do. I would mention just two of them would be Fort Lauderdale High and New River Middle School. I'm just wondering, have we looked at this to see how it impacts us?
At this
Because I
time,
think it's a good thing to know as you're looking, you know, where you actually are, how that's going to impact the development in that region.
what we can do is we can go back and look at the school board's capital planning program to see what they're going to be doing with those particular schools. We could get that information and forward it back to the Planning and Zoning Board.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to add capacity. So, so I just as your plan, as the city's planning for what's going to happen, I think it's just important to know that we do have several schools that are at capacity and others that are above and well above, so that that could impact your. Anyways, we'll talk later, but I would just make sure that you have that list.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I get a little better clarification, the distinction between what this does and the concurrency obligations already in existence?
And I'm sorry, say that again?
Developer concurrency obligations already in existence?
Basically, already we have the interlocal agreement in place. So the developers are already making applications to the school board for their review of school concurrency. And then the school board is basically taking these level of service standards, applying it to the schools, letting the developer know whether or not the school will meet the level of service. This letter then we receive as staff and we can review it as well.
Follow up on that. So then, well then, what is it that we're accomplishing with this that's distinct from that?
The level of service is already in the interlocal agreement and it's part of the comprehensive plan, but it also needs to be in the land development regulations as well as a requirement of the interlocal agreement with the school board.
So it's incorporating that, it's putting it
Yeah.
together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? Okay, thank you very much. Are we voting on this to move? Is there any members of the public that are here to speak on this item? Okay, I see none, so we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board. Do we have a motion?
We request a motion for approval or recommend approval or denial.
Thank you, okay. Does someone want to make that motion?
Yes, motion to approve recommendation to City Commission for the modifications suggested by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Steve second. Okay, any discussion on the motion? If not, please call the roll.
Ms. Furtick?
Yes.
Mr. Ghana?
Yes.
Ms. McCartney?
Sorry, yes?
Mr. Bronco?
Yes.
And Chair Scott?
Yes. Okay.
Passed.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Before we move on, Mary got here after we approved the minutes and wanted to make some changes. I'm not sure how we do that, but
Well,
I figured
I think if
Sherry
you,
and
I think if you look at the minutes on page 11, it says, Ms. Furtick continued, she felt it was important to move the ordinance actually, I believe, Ms. Scott, that was you. And,
I did say that.
yes.
Could we get a motion for reconsideration? We didn't do it by roll call, but I think it was unanimous, so anyone can just do a motion for reconsideration of that motion to approve the minutes, and then we'll do another motion to approve the changes if they're accepted by the board.
Thanks, Sherry.
Yeah, it was my motion to approve it, so I think
Yeah.
I'll do that. I move that we reconsider the minutes.
Okay, is there a second? John, I think you were the person that seconded it. John, do you second that motion? Second that. Okay, good. All right. Do we need to vote on this, or can we move into the recommendations or the changes?
You would need to vote on this one and then the other motion, the
Okay.
next motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, now we let Mary make her changes?
Okay, so on page 11, I believe that was you. It shouldn't say Ms. Furtick continued, but rather than
Whereabouts, Mary?
the very last sentence on
Okay.
page 11. She pointed out the issues continues to be discussed. The city's losing more and more. Emphasized there may be a concern sufficient to delay passage. And
That was
and
me.
That was you.
Okay. You got that, Jamie?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else, Mary?
Well, I noticed that this word, I hate to bring this up again, but I'll just say, stated the staff had been informed that it is preferable the board pass it on. I think what was actually said was that you were directed to have us pass it on. So, actually, the next sentence says that, and I just really feel that that was something that was said that really we should document.
Show me the paragraph. What are you talking
I'm
about?
on page 19.
Okay.
Attorney Wallen
Page
stated the staff
19?
had been informed that it is preferable for the board to pass the proposed ordinance on. And I really think it was stronger than saying it was preferable. So I would just request we could listen to the tape and get the, if you can't do that, and get the actual verbiage of what was said.
What are you proposing, Mary?
I'm proposing that we listen to the tape and get the actual verbiage of what was said at that time. That's it.
Okay. Okay, so I don't really understand what you want them to do at this point.
I think I heard it as well, that instead of preferable, it would say, and has been informed that the commission has directed the board to pass the proposed ordinance to get back to them. It was, the commission directed it. That's what I heard.
Yeah, I didn't say the commission directed. I said
Yeah.
we've been directed.
Okay,
I don't
so-
even use the word preferable, not in my vocabulary. So
You
I
did not.
concur. Thank you.
Yeah. I believe you said that you had been directed to.
Yeah.
That's correct. I never said commission, no.
Okay. So those are the two recommendations and changes to the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve with corrections?
I'll move to approve.
Okay. Second?
Second?
Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Perfect. Glad we got that straightened out. Okay, communication to the city commission. Is there anything the board wants to communicate to the city commission? Okay, for the good of the city.
Yes. Is it possible for us to get a kind of a training on what our roles are as local planning agency? And I know we have a couple capacities that we sit here in, and just have a short training on those two capacities and what we are obligated and empowered to do.
Good idea.
Did you want it like after a meeting? Like when did you want it? Mr. Spence has volunteered.
I think,
Sure, I'll volunteer. I think it would be prudent to do that, particularly also understanding where our guidance is coming from, because I see a lot of things are lost in translation. So I agree with that, but we'd have to figure out a schedule to do so. What is your preference as far as?
Before a meeting?
You want to do that in January? Obviously in January.
5 o'clock? Jared?
Got a great idea.
What if we?
Go ahead, Sherry.
What if we did it an hour before the beginning of a meeting? Say we came at 5 o'clock?
That's great, because then it's not going to go on for 4 hours.
So we'll ask, you would have to check with the availability of the room. I mean, because the meeting, that session still would be within the sunshine, so we'd have to notice it and so forth. That seems
January
fine.
19th. I think we usually have the room.
Okay, I'm being told that we usually have the room, so that would work.
So we're going to make it, we're going to do it the next meeting in January at 5 o'clock.
That works.
Okay, good. Good. Anything else, anybody?
Yep, just one more for the good of the city.
Sure.
You know, I'm an architect and I'm on the front lines.
You're what?
I'm on the front lines dealing with the city on these approvals and reading the code. And, you know, one of the things I always run into, and this is really fresh here, so I had to call Ella this week to talk to her about a project. And one of the things that we run into a lot as designers and developers out there is when we're dealing with the city, we have different groups that we have to satisfy. And we deal with the planning folks, we deal with the garbage people, the school people, the engineering group, the landscaping group, and we have to satisfy all these comments. And while most of the comments relate to the ULDR, a lot of times engineering, being engineers, they get bogged down in details that really don't really affect the outcome of the site plan and our approvals up here. And it really bogs down the process, and I was trying to encourage staff to keep their comments simple. You know, we're going to apply for an engineering permit. We'll address all of these issues, and I just wanted to point that out to you all, because I know you don't get to see that side of things, and, you know, we're trying to do the right thing with developers and landowners and not bog them down in all these silly details. So I had asked staff, you know, on my own project, if they could work with engineering, say, hey, make it a condition of approval. So it's just something that happens every day down at the city that you guys don't see, but I thought I'd bring it up because I think that process should be streamlined.
Is it delaying your process by engineering?
It does.
Not having
It
the time
does.
to deal
It's just red tape, and when they start talking about, well, you know, the slope on that pipe should be 4%, your sidewalk should probably turn this way and not that way. They're dealing with the minutia at the site plan level, which is very helpful in a way, because, you know, if you have to revise it later, it could be a problem. But they should be suggestions rather than requirements before they sign off your DRC, because we're delayed. We'll go through 3 reviews with engineering, and it becomes a real issue to the developers when they're trying to get an approval. And the ULDR deals with how many trees do you got, how many parking spaces do you have, how big's your building, what's the density. So, and I'm really simplifying it, but the engineering's the minutia. It's everything underground. You know, those things can be changed, they can be adapted, and it won't affect the big picture, but it's not really in the ULDR. Those engineering principles are not part of the ULDR. So as much as those comments are appreciated in the process, I think they should be suggestions just to streamline it. And they should never hold back, but I think there should be more direction given to some of the staff at the city where they won't bog down the DRC process talking about all these very specific engineering details that have no real effect on the overall design of the project. So just wanted to share that with you because that's my personal experience. And Ella's done a great job helping me through that, but it's something that I just want to go on record and let you guys know what happens behind the curtains, okay? So,
Okay, thanks, John. Any other comments? Hearing none, I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, and the meeting is adjourned.
Merry Christmas.